Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and welcome to Sunday's edition of the DCU Daily. Does DC need a shared universe? I think if we're honest with ourselves, there's always been a time where we've looked at what Feige's done with the MCU and thought to ourselves, oh, I wish DC had an epic, amazing universe like the MCU where every film is successful. Wouldn't that be nice? That'd be amazing, right? I've thought that before, I'll be honest, but then I thought about the other side of the coin, that we would have a franchise that wouldn't always do great movies. Would you swap Superman the movie, Superman 2, Joker, Batman 89, Batman 92, Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, The Batman, for what Marvel have got? And let's look at how Feige got to this. How did he do it? And I think it's really interesting to look at, because what he did at the beginning was lose so he could win. So the first movie, for example, the first movie, Iron Man 2008, is a great movie. But then Iron Man 2 is a bad movie. I would dare to say that Jon Favreau was more in charge of the first movie than the second movie. And I think once Feige and his producer's hat gets involved in the process, things don't end as good as how a director would see things. Because Jon Favreau is a writer-director. He is a clever guy. That's why Iron Man 1 is better than Iron Man 2. But let's look at the MCU, because after the first Iron Man, they did Iron Man 2, bad movie. The Incredible Hulk, which is perceived as a bad movie. Thor 1, which is perceived as a bad movie. I don't think either of those movies are, by the way. And then Captain America, the First Avenger. Lots of people perceive that movie as bad. Again, I don't. I think it's a tremendous first step. Thor, and all of these films, right, just to reach to the A game of Avengers. So what happens is, he lost so he could have won. And I think definitely when you look at Avengers Ensemble and Avengers Age of Ultron, you can tell that Joss Whedon was more in charge of the first movie than the second movie. When something becomes successful, producers like to get involved. And when Feige tried to get his hands involved in a director's vision, things have ended badly. But because Feige lost before he won, something very interesting happened. In the early days before the first Avengers, lots of people didn't want Feige involved. They didn't like kind of the films that were being put out there, the origin movies, Iron Man 2. Then something really strange happened. From the moment everyone saw Avengers, everyone thought he was a lord. He was amazing. He was a genius. But was the first Avengers as good as we remember it? And how did we get to a really good team-up movie? It is, by the way. And then a mediocre team-up movie, which still made a lot of money. And then we got Iron Man 3, which still made a lot of money. After the first Avengers, we got a lot of bad movies that were making money. And actually, that's been the situation ever since. And I think that's really, really interesting, that because of one really good movie, the reputation went out there that the MCU is the best. And everyone kept on watching these movies and giving them a thumbs up, even though most of them since the first Avengers have been really bad, right? It's amazing. So every CEO, every other studio ever since has said, get me some of that. In 2013, they said at Warner Brothers, get me some of that. So they brought in Christopher Nolan to headline his own DC cinematic universe and godfather it like Kevin Feige had godfathered it. Rewind the times, Heyman. Yes, I think it needs a shared universe. Me personally, I love continuing stories from one movie to the other, to another. Yes, in theory, rewind the times, it sounds amazing. And if it works, it's amazing. But I think it's a very difficult thing to reach to these days, because people don't have the patience they had back in the early days of the MCU. All the attention is on DC. Whatever they do is analysed and critiqued again. with a magnifying glass. The same thing never happened to the MCU and still is not happening to the MCU. They're getting away with making bad movies. And any CEO of any studio would like to get away with making bad movies. And so you look at everything, mostly, since the first Avengers, it hasn't been great, but it's been greatly reviewed and it makes a lot of money. You can't buy that kind of thing. It's amazing, isn't it? Now, most people, a lot of people are saying that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness isn't a very well-made movie, and it's a very underwhelming movie as well. Some people are spinning it as Marvel taking a risk and doing something different, and we should finally be applauding this because we always critique Marvel for not taking any risks. I'd say the opposite. I don't think they've taken any risks in this film at all. I think the person who ends up being such a threat in the movie and kills so many people, that's what she does in the comics. And the problem is with her, they tried making her a hero at the beginning of her story and didn't give any hints to what she would become. That's interesting. I think that Whedon did a better job as making her a threat in Age of Ultron than Raimi did in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. But of course, we're talking about the DCEU. But that's why I'm talking about the MCU. So lots of people have tried to copy and pattern this franchise building. It hasn't worked within the DCEU, mainly because it was Snyder who was doing it, and he had a very different idea. He was doing what Feige was doing. He was trying to create an interconnected universe, but the way he executed those movies wasn't what the mainstream and diehard comic book fans wanted. And this has been, the divisive kind of attitude towards the DCEU ever since. So DC have failed to copy and pattern the Feige plan. The Feige plan was very simple in the early movies before the first Avengers. Make individual standalone movies, but have little building blocks in each movie. Then they got to the Avengers and that movie exploded. Now that experiment could have gone the other way and there wouldn't be an MCU now, but it worked. Somehow it worked. It's not actually that difficult to do what Feige did. What's difficult is to succeed in what Feige did. Now, if we look at Sonic, they're doing the same thing as Iron Man 1 and 2. They've done two very successful movies. And eventually, I assume we will have, a team up of all the Sega characters in live action, which will be amazing. They're actually winning at copying and patterning the Feige plan because the Feige plan is quite simplistic. And all you have to do is start off with a character, give that character a couple of movies, expand to other characters, then do a team up, see how you're getting along. And if that team up explodes, then you've got a universe. I said it before Justice League was released, before I knew it was Justice League. I said, if this movie explodes in the right way, the DCEU will be a huge success. People won't be talking about Zod's neck snapping or what happened in BVS or the first Suicide Squad. People will forget all of that because people forgot the so-called bad movies in early MCU as soon as Avengers Assemble first released. People forget when you give them what they're asking for. It's the rules of consumer basis. You can make mistakes, but if you do one thing really, really right, like the first Avengers movie, everyone forgets, everyone forgives you. But the first Justice League movie was a disaster. Now, what would have happened if Zack Snyder's Justice League had released as planned? I think people would have appreciated it. It would have done a little bit better in the box office than Joss Whedon's movie. But ultimately, the same complaints would have been there about Snyder. And mostly what people said about it, it's better than Joss Whedon's version. That's all you got. Mostly, that's all you got. So that tells you something that people, the mainstream audience and comic book fans weren't really ever going to embrace Zacks Vision. But certainly, no one could deny what he achieved with Darkseid, which was a comic book accurate version of Darkseid. He didn't mess around with Darkseid, but he did mess with Superman. He did mess with Batman. You look at Superman, right? The first Superman movie isn't really Zacks' vision, apart from visually it's his vision, but narratively, Man of Steel is not Zack Snyder's vision. And you see what he does with Superman in BVS. He makes Superman a guest star in his own sequel. A bit like what they're doing with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And in his Justice League movie, he's literally in what? 5-10 minutes of the movie? If you add in the bits with Clark and Superman. What does that say about how Zack Snyder feels about Superman? And I'm not putting a hot take in there. I'm just telling you how I see it. Because we complained when Justice League did it, didn't have a lot of Superman, but Joss was just working off of the Snyder plan and didn't have the schedule to put more Superman in. I always wonder if Joss Whedon was allowed to reboot the DCEU and give a Justice League movie as the first movie, how that movie would have fared. What kind of movie would we have got? I always wonder about that. I think him and Jeff Johns would have actually done a good job. Bat Super, I was thinking about this last night. Maybe they could just do separate trilogies or characters. Maybe they should ease off the shared universe for now. Yes, Bat Super, I agree with you. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing more that I would love to have Green Lantern calls, a Superman, set of movies, Batman and Wonder Woman and, Superwoman and all these DC characters in one extended universe, and it all adds on and it's part of a saga. I enjoy continuation as well. That's why I'm a fan of the soaps, especially the UK soaps. I like something that continues. I hated it when I was a kid that the A-Team would do a story one week and never speak about the story that they were involved in the week after. I love continuity. I love good continuity. I always have. But I just feel that there's no faith in DC doing this now. And I don't know if Zaslav is going to chase the shared universe model. But we can talk about it right now. Will David Zaslav chase the shared universe model? Look, they know there's money to be made. They know if they get a situation like Fager's got, where you can make not very good movie and get top box office because it's the next continuing strand in a shared franchise, everyone would want that. But I think they need to come to a realization. If we do succeed with a DC shared universe, we're just going to be accused of copying and patterning. And people may say, well, so what? If it's successful, it's successful. And I agree. But it's actually DC Animation who nailed this platform from the beginning. DC Animation and Smallville nailed this from the beginning. Smallville created a shared DC universe in a pre-Superman story. Amazing. We got it again. Bruce Timm, created a shared animated DC universe way before Feige did it. Feige may have not have done it as well as the DCEU has done it. But there you go. I think that everything has a sell-by date. And I think eventually, not yet, but eventually, maybe in about 5 years, people will be done with the shared universe. Trill J, hey guys, what's up? A very good morning to you, Trill J. It is morning here, very early in the morning. I had a lot to drink last night, so you can tell that on my face. But we are here to talk about our geek and nerd. We are here to do the DCEU Daily and talk about and ask the question, does DC need a shared universe? Rewind the times. I really think Zaslav is going to look at what Feige and the MCU are doing and try and do that. He kind of already hinted at that with saying he wants a Kevin Feige-like person in charge. Well, we don't know if he said that. That's what Variety said. But anyway, it would make sense for a CEO to chase the extended universe dream. My advice is don't do it. Don't do it. Because is this new CEO patient enough to make a Superman movie, a Batman movie, a Wonder Woman movie, and different movies building up to a Justice League movie? Now, I'm talking about really good individual solo movies building up to a Justice League movie. They would be great. We would enjoy them. But the problem is they wouldn't make a lot of money at first. Like Feige, he would have to lose to win. Is he willing to do that? Has he got the patience to do it? And the only reason Fake had the patience to do it, because nobody else had attempted it before, and nobody was really watching or analyzing what they were doing. There was a lot of complaints from Marvel stands at the time, because I remember there was demonstrations. There was people boycotting the MCU at the start, wanting Fake to leave. And Marvel Studios, then Disney, stuck by Fake because they believed in his vision. They could see what he was doing behind the scenes, and now it works out for them. So we read an article on last night's Movies TV Mad Live that Zaslav is looking to bring a couple of MGM producers in. Now, they would be probably running the new Warner Discovery Studios or Pictures kind of department, or maybe even a DC Studios. But again, if they're going to run a DC Studios, what do they know about DC? I would imagine very, very little. People involved in Marvel Studios are comic book people. You know that, don't you? The people behind the scenes at Marvel Studios from the very beginning and even now are comic book people. They know Marvel. They're producers. They're clever. They know what they're doing. But they're Marvel people. They love these Marvel universes and characters. And that's why it continues to be successful. Even if you get a bad movie, like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, they'll do something that kind of shadows the comics. So beyond their identity politics, they'll do something like they did with a certain cameo, right? Because that character they cameoed is beyond the great actor who was playing him. That is the best Marvel character. He's the smartest Marvel character. Putting him into live action is important. Now, I know what they did with him, but they'll deal with that as part of the multiverse. You will see him again. And that's the difference. The people working at the DC Extended Universe are not DC people. I'll prove it to you. 2 DC comic book legends died this week, right? George Perez sadly died yesterday, I think. It was announced yesterday. Not one DCEU director has tweeted any sorrow or regret about that. That's all you need to know about the current DCEU, that it doesn't have DC Comics people involved. Now, you're going to say, well, they've got Jim Lee. They do have Jim Lee, but I don't believe he makes decisions in terms of storytelling, right? That's the problem. Jim Lee's more kind of running, he's the guy in charge of the whole of DC rather than DC live action. That's the difference. But I just think it's because he's Uncle Jim and we all love him and they just put his name there. I don't think he's even making any big decisions. Rewind the times. You just said it, Mick. They have comic book people doing it behind the scenes. We need this in DC and desperately to go forward in the right, but more importantly, correct direction. Exactly, rewind the times. But is this the model they're chasing? When you look at those 2 producers, we read the article about who they want to bring in. What do they know about DC? Now, if they're going to be in charge of Warner Discovery Pictures, I'm interested in that because they're film people. They love film and they can make great films and they can bring Warner Brothers Pictures as a whole into the Warner Brothers. We've been celebrating for 30, 40, 50, nearly 100 years, right? That'll be good. But those type of people should not be the type of people running a DC Studios. I think that's what's really important here. You need DC Comics people, right? Now, Kevin Feige isn't necessarily a Marvel person, but he researched it. He gets it. He probably likes Marvel. He probably read it as a kid, but he probably didn't know the comics so well, and he researched it. I don't think he's as big a Marvel fan as everyone thinks he is. He probably is now. I mean, it's his job to be a Marvel fan, right? So he always gives the audience something. As I say, even if he does something bad, he'll do something good in the same content. We saw it in Moon Knight. Moon Knight episode really, until we get to the Asylum episode, is very middling and dull. Stephen is a really good character, and you're there for him, but Mark's not really an exciting character. And when it's him, and when Oscar is playing him, it's not as exciting. When we get to Asylum, you get this really great comic book kind of Faith with the comic books, a really great episode. I still think they ripped it off of Smallville seasons 3 and 6, but never mind. It's really good and it becomes its own thing. So even in something that's mediocre or not that enjoyable, Feig will give you something. So you can't reject it. Also, Feig, this is what's the genius of the shared universe model. If you watch one thing, you have to watch the other thing. Even if you know it's middling, even if you know it's filler, you have to watch it or you feel you're missing out. It's why I went back and completed Moon Knight. It's why, I've done a lot of things when I've missed MCU movies because I don't want to feel like I'm missing out on a chapter. That is fucking genius. That's the most genius thing ever. That's why soap operas are successful, because people don't want to miss an episode, right? That's why they go on for so long. That's why Coronation Street has been going since 1960 and why Emmerdale has been going since the 70s, when it used to be called Emmerdale Farm, but it's still the same show as that. You don't want to miss an episode of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's genius. It may be middling. It may be kind of an alternative for the B movie in the 21st century, but you don't want to miss a chapter. And that's why it will keep on being successful in the near future. Who knows how long this can last? I think they've dropped the ball in phase 4. There's no question about that. I think they've lowered budgets. They've lowered the quality. There's no question about that. And even MCU stands can see it. But the question I'm asking here today, should DC go the same way? Does DC need a shared universe? Well, it all depends. As I said earlier, are you willing to lose so you can win? Are you happy to make proper superhero solo movies building up to a Justice League movie? As I've said, if I was doing that, I would start off with a Justice League movie, make that my pilot of the franchise, if you like, introducing these DC characters and universes in a 3-hour Justice League movie, an epic 3-hour Justice League movie that doesn't feel like 3 hours. Exciting people, introducing people to OR, Krypton, Metropolis, Gotham, all in the same movie, and do it well. It would cost a lot of money because we'd actually make the effort to create our own, Gotham, not using a city in the world, and the Metropolis, again, a fictional Metropolis that feels like a fantastical Dick Tracy kind of universe, if you like. Something like that. But is this the right way to go? Chasing the shared universe model? If I had a choice right now with DC and looking the way it's going with Sonic and Marvel, I personally wouldn't chase after the shared universe model. I think it's ill-conceived, not because they failed with the DCEU, because it's a long game that they're not willing to do. So once they make a couple of movies and they see the returns are not as good as they were hoping for, what's going to happen is they're going to start changing their plan like they did with the DCEU. This studio, whether it's Zaslav or anyone else, are going to have impatience because Zaslav has invested a lot of money and Discovery have. They want quick fire hits. So you may think going after the shared universe model is a good idea, but I think the best course of action for Zaslav to take is this is what I'd do. And as I say, it would be such a bold thing to do, but I would do it. I would delete the DCEU. What they should have done, even after BVS, they should have deleted the DCEU. But definitely after Justice League, I would delete the DCEU. There would be no DCEU. Now, maybe I would release the movies they've made. Maybe I wouldn't. Maybe that would be another bold decision I could make. And after those films had been and gone, I would start doing solo, individual DC movies by directors who love DC. So I wouldn't be going down the Zack Snyder or Christopher Nolan route. I would give directors who know and love DC however much money they wanted, total artistic integrity and freedom. And I'd say, make the DC film you want. But let me be clear to you. You don't get to make another one. You make one movie, then we move on. You can make other movies. The same director can make other movies of other characters, but we don't do a shared universe. We're not going to do that. We're just going to make one-off, standalone movies about these characters. Now, of course, you want more Superman, right? I suppose you could have the same Superman turn up in other films. I mean, I think maybe I'd have to, my rule wouldn't be so stringent in terms of, yeah, you could do loads of the same Superman movies like they did with the Weve movies. You could do that with a defined vision, right? But what you shouldn't be doing is chasing the shared universe model, right? You have a director who understands Superman. There you go. Make your Superman movies and, you know, just make great Superman movies that are faithful to the source material. Put your own take to them, of course, but don't stray too far out of the nest. But that's super. Bruce Timm and Paul Dini could bring the same success for live action as they did for the animated stuff. We all know that. It doesn't seem like they're going down that direction. Of course, that is a mistake. We all know that's a mistake. As I keep on saying, Marvel Studios has Marvel people working there. That's the difference. Whatever you think about the quality of the individual movies, it's why the universe works so well. For Marvel and Feige and Marvel Studios, it's about the universe, not the individual movies. The individual movies are just the stepping stone to the next thing. That's all they are. And that's why the franchise continues to be successful and stands get excited for the next chapter. So if you could do that with DC, it would be great. But can anyone do what Feige's done? Are you willing to lose before you win? I don't think so. I don't think these people, I think these people are in a rush to grab the money bags. And if you are in the rush to grab the money bags, I think doing solo, standalone movies, as I say, if you want to do sequels to these standalone movies, fine, but keep away from the shared game. And I know people are desperate for cameos and Easter eggs. Keep it away from them. Let the people, keep the people wanting more. People are still clamoring for an ET2, and you're never going to get an ET2, but people still want it. But it doesn't mean you have to give it to them. I think the franchise model will slowly die, and it's not really a big thing. It's only a big thing when you look at Marvel. Nobody really, apart from Sonic, which seems to be going in the right direction. Let's see if they can, you know, hit the home run. And in the end, do a Sonic kind of team-up movie. Let's see if they can do it as successfully as Feige has. But as I say, it's not that it's difficult. But as I say, you've got to keep on losing so you can win at the end with a Justice League movie. Are you willing to do that? As I said earlier, you could start the franchise with a Justice League movie. It could work. People would criticize you at first. But I think it could work into introducing that world if you did it properly. But as I say, personally, I'd just delete the DCEU and do standalone movies. As I say, you could do sequels and stuff like that to your movies, or you could just start off doing a Superman standalone movie, a Batman standalone movie, a Wonder Woman standalone movie, you know, and then go a Green Lantern, a Plastic Man. There's so many DC characters. You start off with Superman and you just do all these solo movies, right? And if you get to a certain point and you think, hang on a minute, we've done all these solo movies that have nothing to do with each other. People are clamoring for us to team these people up. If you've done something so popular and successful, then you can say, well, maybe we can change our plan. Maybe we should do a Justice League movie with these guys in them. But here's the thing. If you feel the solo plan is working, you just carry on with the solo plan. I just feel that Warner Brothers need to stick to the tradition of making good films. And I think a cinematic universe is not, it's opposed to making good movies. And I think there's very few good movies in the MCU. Look at what happened after Iron Man 2008, which was a really, really good movie. I really believe that. An excellent movie. But Iron Man 2 is an Incredible Hulk. I think it is, but many people don't see it as a good movie. And then the other kind of origin movies that they did. And so this is what you've got to think about. Do you want good movies or a great franchise? That's an interesting one, isn't it? Good movies or a good franchise? I don't think you can have both. The MCU proves that people stand the franchise more than the movies. This is what happened with current day MCU. Next movie, best thing ever. Next movie, best thing ever, better than the last one. And then they'll say the last one was crap. Best thing ever, best thing ever. They only care about what's coming next. The people at the studio only care about what's coming next. And the consumer only cares about what's coming next. That means every movie, which is just a stepping stone to these people, doesn't last. It won't be remembered. Very few movies will be remembered. Now there'll be Avengers Infinity War that will be remembered, in Avengers Endgame that will be remembered. But very few of these Marvel movies will be remembered as individual solo movies. The crown of the greatest Marvel solo movies will go to X-Men, X-Men 2, Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 by Sam Raimi and Bryan Singer. That's where that crown goes to. And, you know, that Spider-Man franchise wasn't, you know, nobody's saying it's a great franchise, but it's a great two movies. Nobody's saying what Bryan Singer did was a great franchise, but those two movies, those first two movies, are two of the best Marvel movies and CBMs ever made. They were made as a budget. The first one was a record. It's in the Guinness World Records for being one of the cheapest comic book movies, Hollywood blockbusters ever made to get such, you know, box office, big box office. So there you go. You learn something new every day. Rewind the times. All I want is a plan and a direction. But you see, isn't it interesting? Because that's not what Hollywood franchise used to be. You know, Indiana Jones, its first trilogy, didn't have a plan and a direction. Indiana Jones has 4 individual solo movies. Maybe we should go down that direction if we think about it. We never used to need a plan and a direction. The James Bond franchise, when I was growing up, didn't have a plan and a direction. Its plan was to make entertaining, exciting movies. I grew up with Roger Moore, Live and Let Die, The Spy Who Loved Me, Moonraker. I still watch these movies today. Did they have a plan and a direction for an extended universe with crossovers and Easter eggs? No, but they made a lot of money and people enjoyed them. Now, maybe you're saying, well, Mick, we're in 2022, we're in the 21st century, things have changed. Well, maybe things have changed, but maybe things haven't changed as much as we think. Ultimately, it's only Feige and Marvel that have succeeded at doing this. So many. I mean, what about Universal's Monster Universe? The first one with Russell Crowe and Tom Cruise. What an absolute disaster. They should have stuck with it and made a better movie the second time around. But you see, your first movie in a franchise is very important. If Doctor No wasn't a great movie, where would the Bond franchise be today? You need a good pilot episode. You need a good first movie. Iron Man was a great launch for the MCU. People were thinking about Iron Man, not Iron Man 2, not the Incredible Hulk. That's how it lasted until they hobbled on to the first Avengers movie. It's the perception of your consumer that matters. So if you start with a bad pilot episode, if Smallville's pilot episode or Arrow wasn't very good, people wouldn't have stuck with it. But Smallville's pilot episode and Lost was one of the best pilots ever made. If Lost didn't make such a compelling, expensive pilot, then Lost wouldn't have been a success. So I think if you are going down even a self-contained universe that with standalone movies like Indiana Jones, right, and like the old James Bond, you still got to have that first opening chapter that works. Uncharted is a great thing to look at. A lot of people thought Uncharted was going to be shit. They didn't like the castings. They kind of brought in, you know, they kept on bringing in, you know, removing cast members, bringing in other cast members, not knowing what to do with it. That's why it worked, because they thought quite deeply about what they were going to do. Uncharted was a big box office hit, and it's a really good adventure movie. It's fun, and Tom Holland doesn't... I don't think about Peter Parker when I'm watching Tom Holland, because Tom Holland does a really good performance in that movie, and he actually uses a different American accent as well, which is important. And so, you know, you can do a great franchise, but the beginning of a franchise is where patience is needed. And that's what I mean about losing before you win. And I don't think David Zaslav is willing. We'll find out on May the 18th if he's willing to lose before he could win. Bat Super, instead of crossing over with other heroes, each hero could team up with the characters from their own world. Superman with Supergirl, Batman with the Bat family. Yes, exactly, Bat Super. That's the thing. You know, you could integrate the Superman family. You could integrate the Batman family within that universe, but it's individual. But the most important thing would be, especially in its first movie, is to make a great Superman film, you know, faithful to the source material, like Matt Reeves did with Batman. That's why that film is being celebrated. And I think that's probably the future. Now, it'll be interesting what David Zaslav thinks of the Batman. I mean, it is getting a second movie. It is getting the spin-offs. I know that Zaslav has been making decisions before the takeover was even official. So we can see that they're planning on cancelling certain things and doing away with certain visions. And it's clear they are looking to remove Toby Emmerich. Otherwise, they wouldn't be talking to these bods at MGM. That's a fact. They're looking to replace Toby Emmerich. They should have replaced him, but they didn't, right? Because they didn't have a plan. So they're taking their time and they want to get it right. So we have to give kudos to that. So it looks like they are looking to replace Toby Emmerich. Now, you would assume if they're looking to replace Toby Emmerich, they're looking to replace Walter Hamada. Again, to replace Walter Hamada, you first have to replace Emmerich, and the people who replace him have to do some searching, have to do some headhunting for the best person to run a DC Studios. These decisions shouldn't be rushed. So I know a lot of people are saying, why aren't they doing things? Why aren't they rushing? Because if you rush, you make mistakes. Kevin Feige and the people at Marvel Studios were able to take their time because there was no pressure on them. You know, it wasn't a trend to make a cinematic universe. Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios made it a trend. Now, everyone wants to do it. Hollywood is famous for trying to copy trends. After Ghost, everyone was making films about love stories about a partner who dies. Remember Always with Richard Dreyfuss and Holly Hunter? It's kind of the same story as Ghost, but it's very, very different. That was directed by Steven Spielberg. It wasn't as successful as Ghost. This is what Hollywood does. If one person does something that works, they try and copy and pattern the same thing, and it's very rare that it works. After Bond, they tried to do spy thrillers. That never worked. After Lethal Weapon, they did a lot of movies with a white man and a black man as police officers partnering up. It very rarely worked. You can see moments in Hollywood history that they've tried to copy each other. And now we come to the cinematic universe, something that Kevin Feige has made utterly successful. Everyone's trying to copy and pattern it, and nobody is successful at it. As I say, Sonic has started well, but will they fall at the final hurdle? We'll have to wait and see. So setting up a cinematic universe takes time and patience. Time and patience that these studios don't have today because they need instant success. The COVID pandemic has really cost studios big time. You can see that Netflix are struggling and other streaming services are struggling. People are not, you know, even Twitter and Spotify, they're all struggling now because people after the COVID pandemic have realized something, that maybe it's best if we can't be found, right? Maybe we should put our hoods on and hide. That's what's happened now. That's the new world that we're living in because the pandemic and its restrictions scared people. So we are there where these big companies are losing money and want to make big money. Even the way we see phase 4 going of the MCU, we can right now the MCU has brand loyalty. Once you have brand loyalty, you can take any liberty you want. And that's why Feige is able to make films that are not very good because there's brand loyalty. How long this brand loyalty lasts, we'll have to wait and see. Now, in terms of DC, some people like us, we have brand loyalty. We're loyal to this brand, but not enough people have faith in it. That's why I can't see a situation, and if they do it, wow, where you can change the perception of the DCEU as is. The only way for me, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe they will turn the DCEU around and it'll be successful. That was the original plan by Hamada, to reboot the DCEU and bring some brand loyalty to it. And if he's able to do it, if Zaslav and Discovery are able to do it, hey, I take my hat off to you. I don't think you can do it, though. I think the die is cast with the DCEU, and if it was me, I would cancel it immediately. I would have cancelled it years ago, and I would start with these solo, standalone superhero movies written and directed and produced by people who can produce and direct, skillful people who know and love these DC characters. There's so many people out there who want to get their hands on Superman. Batman is taken right now, so that's fair enough, but there's so many characters in DC, and there's talented people out there who know and love these characters who can make great solo movies. I think that should be our focus for now. Great solo superhero movies. And if we get to 5 or 6 solo movies and it works and people are desperate for a Justice League with these characters in, then think about doing it. But think about that very carefully. But because once you decide to go down that shared universe direction, there's no going back. Every film has to have a cameo and an Easter egg. They demand it. But if you stay solo, you don't have to give them anything. You can give them Easter eggs from the comics without no cameos. You can do that, right? But you're not under pressure to deliver something that's not a real story, that's not a real film. Ultimately, Marvel Studios and Disney will be very happy with the opening of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. But one day in the future, when Kevin Feige is 80 years old and he looks back at his success, he'll say he made people happy. He created a live-action comic book franchise, and that's great. But he'll have a little bit of regret that he didn't produce many good movies. He never produced in the MCU. Now, he was involved very smallly, very in the background, if you like. Smallly, is that a word? He had a minor involvement in X-Men, X-Men 2, Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2. He can be proud of his involvement in those movies. But when he looks back at the MCU and what he's created, he'll have a lot of pride. He made Marvel fans really happy. As I say, he created a continued live-action comic book, if you like, franchise. And it works and it has brand loyalty. But as I say, when he looks back at the MCU's individual movies after Phase 1, he'll look at them and say, maybe I could have made better movies, and maybe that's a regret of mine. Rewind the times and praying that these next 4 DCEU movies really change the landscape of the DC movies. Let me explain something to you. Rewind the times. These movies were made and produced before David Zaslav. They were made by the same people who produced The Suicide Squad, Birds of Prey and Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, and Wonder Woman 84. Although they were also produced by the people who gave us Shazam and Aquaman. Basically, these are people who have had inconsistent results in terms of the DCEU since Snyder has left. So I can't trust that Black Adam's going to be a great movie. It might be, but I don't know for sure. Right? So we don't know. And I can't promise you that Shazam! Fury of the Gods will be a great movie. I think these 2 movies have the best chance of pleasing people because they don't have Amber Heard and Ezra Miller in them. I can't promise you that Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is going to be a great movie. I think it will look fucking stunning like the first film did, but I can't promise you, right? It's going to be a great movie. And I also can't promise you that the Flash movie is the movie I originally thought and hyped for, that it was going to be a great movie. I really was on this channel hyping this multiverse strategy, this reboot plan. I thought it was exciting. And the deeper I dig into it, the more problems I have with it, the more I'm worried about that, and hearing, and I don't know how true it is, none of us do, but hearing that they could be replacing Supergirl with Superman. Or should I say, I always get confused when I say this. Basically, if it's true that they're getting rid of Superman and bringing in Supergirl to replace him, that's problematic to me. Now, I don't know if that's true. Nobody does. There's a lot of things I know about the Flash movie. I don't know about that. So there's confusion there. I'm estimating and guesstimating that the changes that are being made are in the Flashpoint universe, and scoopers are using this to stir the pot, to stir the shit. But we will wait and see. But that's the problem with the DCEU. since its inception. You just don't know what's going to be a good movie, a great movie, a mediocre movie, or a damn right bad movie. For me, Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman are great movies. Suicide Squad is a good movie. Wonder Woman is a great movie. Zack Snyder's Justice League is a great movie. Aquaman is a great movie. Shazam is a good movie. Birds of Prey is an okay movie with horrible toxic messaging. Wonder Woman 84 is just an embarrassment of a movie, end of. And James Gunn's The Suicide Squad is a really, really good movie. I wouldn't call it a great movie, but I'll call it a really, really good movie. And I enjoyed it because James Gunn makes good stuff. Peacemaker is a great streaming show. When it goes over what he's trying to say at the beginning, it's actually kind of an interesting series and a great journey for Peacemaker, Chris Smith. And I'm looking forward to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 because James Gunn is the only director who gets creative freedom. Think about that for a minute. You're telling me that Sam Raimi got creative freedom? No. He was allowed to put a few of his kind of things that he likes to do in his movies, like jump scares and, his mate and things like that. But Sam Raimi didn't have complete and utter control of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Because apart from the director I just mentioned, how can I just forget his name? But apart from the Guardians of the Galaxy director, it's the alcohol, right? So apart from James Gunn, the only person who has creative freedom at the MCU is Kevin Feige. That's the only person. They said Chloe Zhao had creative freedom because she was able to design the color of the sky. I must admit, I think Chloe had a lot more freedom, apart from James Gunn, and most directors have. I think Feige wanted to look, he wanted a kind of a Zack Snyder type of movie with Eternals, and they did that. Eternals is a really interesting film that I don't dislike. A lot of people dislike it because it doesn't have the MCU formula in it, but that's a good thing. People are saying the same thing about Doctor Strange, that it's not as formulaic as the other MCU movies. But I would beg to differ. I just think this is a movie that's been cut to hell, and you can tell there are missing elements from this film, as we could tell from Justice League. And when you do that, you're in trouble. Is that the direction the DCEU want to remain in? Trying to succeed in something we haven't succeeded in, the extended universe? No. I think we need to get rid of this extended universe and start again with solo superhero movies and make the best entertaining solo movies we can. Let's focus on each movie. Not a plan, not a direction, not an expanded universe, not thinking about the next movie when we're making that movie. And I think Matt Reeves made that clear about his movie, that he wasn't thinking about the next movie. He was just thinking about the movie he was making. That may sound very old-fashioned, but when you do that, you make the best movies. Do you remember when people actually made movies and cared about the movies they were making? That's got lost. I hope that Zaslav and Discovery, when they talk about bringing Warner Brothers back to its glory days, understand one thing. Warner Brothers' glory days, let's make it clear, were about focusing on each movie and making great movies. Despite the calamity of AT&T running it, and Kevin Sugihara and Toby Emmerich, even in the dark days of WB, we've seen some amazing films. In fact, next month, we will see an Elvis Presley movie made and written and directed by one of the best directors of all time, Baz Luhrmann. So Warner Brothers can still produce great movies. June is a great movie. They gave that director, Denis Villeneuve, total freedom. So they can still do that. They are still capable of that. That's what they need to do. We need superhero movies that give directors the kind of freedom Denis Villeneuve has had with June and what Baz Luhrmann had with Elvis. Once you do that, the results are beautiful. That's super. I think the only reason they gave Chloe Zhao so much freedom is because it was the Eternals. Had it been Avengers or something like that, she wouldn't have so much freedom. No, of course not. She wouldn't never get to direct an Avengers movie because of her sensibilities as a director. Ultimately, with an extended universe, a franchise, they're protective of making the money and keeping things within that formula. That's what they do. But you see, we've become an audience and an industry that just cares about the bottom line. Even us, the audience, all we talk about is the box office and the stats over the movies themselves. Isn't that sad that we barely talk about the characters anymore? The events in the movies. We talk about hot takes, we talk about box office, we talk about stats of box office, we do movie math. People like Grace Randolph launched that divisive conversation. A box office for a movie or a franchise should never be your lookout, you the consumer or me the consumer. We should be focused on the movies and whether we liked it or not, our favourite scenes, our worst scenes. That's what our priority should be when talking about any movie, not just superhero and comic book ones. We don't make the profits. The only lookout I ever have in box office for a movie or ratings for a television show is that they get enough so they can keep on making more. And as long as they do that, I'm fine. But people have become obsessed with the wrong things. And they have trained us. This is how they distract us. Right now, The Rock the Dwayne The Rock Johnson, right? How do you say his name, right? The Rock is distracting us. He had a birthday party during reshoots for Black Adam. He's going down the opposite tact of not hiding that there are reshoots. But he is making a mistake. Repeatedly, he keeps on saying the movie's just having some finishing touches. Really, Dwayne? Why did you have to work out so hard for finishing touches? Something's going on here. Just like it was going on when The Flash was delayed. In fact, these reshoots could be connected to that. Maybe there were Ezra Miller cameos in Shazam! Fury of the Gods and Black Adam. Maybe they've cut those cameos out and maybe they're putting another cameo in there. Who could it be? I don't know. Has anyone seen Henry Cavill lately? Maybe we should find out where he is right now. This has been the DCEU Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. I will see you tonight with Movies TV Mad Live. We will be talking. You will be asking me questions. I will react to those questions. I will react to your hot takes and your takes about the movie industry, the entertainment industry. We can talk about anything. Of course, our specialized subject is DC live action. But I know a lot about the entertainment industry. I've watched television and film since I was a very small boy. So if it's something I know about, I will respond to you and give you my honest opinion. That's super. Yet people use box office as an argument for a movie being good or bad. Something being popular or not doesn't say anything about the quality of a film. A beautifully crafted film could flop or not. Yes, it's an interesting thing. Since kind of Hollywood started in the 30s, right, or even the 20s, there's been films that didn't make money, but they were beautiful films. There's lots of films I watched as a kid that didn't make money. Great movies. I don't think the first Terminator made a lot of money. Maybe it did, maybe I'm wrong. But there's films out there that you loved as a child that didn't make a lot of money. It doesn't make them bad movies, but that's how people view things now. In box office and franchises, I really think DC need to get out of that argument because we're never going to win a battle comparing ourselves to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the more we try and compare ourselves to them, the more we lose. But if we do standalone movies for each of these iconic characters, no one can compare us with the MCU because we're not trying to do the same thing. Until we see each other again tonight in Movies TV Mad Live, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen. Thank you for the views, thank you for the likes, thank you for the support as ever. It's a great little channel. It's brilliant. We've got good people following us. We have great conversations about entertainment. I'm really enjoying these live videos, and I hope you are too. Bat Super, see you next stream. See you later, Bat Super. Thank you very much. See you tonight. Bye-bye for now.